Now to Mr. Emmer of Minnesota, a new member of the committee.
Thank you, Chairman Rice and Ranking Member Engel, for holding this important hearing. I'd also like to thank the committee staff for their work and their patience, and the distinguished panel for attending the hearing to provide us with their analysis. Ambassador Kim, David Albright, the president of the Institute for Science in International Security, has commented that the North Korean policy of President Barack Obama's administration has been called, quote, strategic patience. And recently, the president said in response to the hacking, the Sony hacking, that the U.S. would respond, quote, proportionally. Can you define that for me and comment, if you will, on this strategic patience reference?
Thank you, Congressman. Strategic patience, I think, has been misunderstood as our policy. It's not. It was just a description of the approach we were taking about resumption of negotiations. Precisely because of some of the important lessons we've learned from our previous efforts in negotiating with the North Koreans, both in the six-party process but also bilaterally earlier in the agreed framework days of mid-1990s. We wanted to make sure to take a very deliberate, cautious approach in coordination with our partners so that if and when negotiations resume, we would have a much better chance, much more credible chance of actually making some lasting progress on the nuclear issue. So strategic patience just simply referred to that approach. It was not necessarily our policy per se. And I think that's where we are still, which is to say that we want to make sure that there's adequate preparation and that there's demonstration of commitment from the North Koreans to denuclearization before we return to negotiations.
So, Mr. Ambassador, if I can then take you to the next part of my question, and I understand that the proportional response language was in response to the Sony episode, but is the administration now signaling an increase in intensity?
I think that would be accurate. As Assistant Secretary Glazer pointed out, the new executive order signed by the President gives us tremendous flexibility and broad authority to go after targets. As we develop information, as we meet standards of evidence, we will designate more North Korean entities, North Korean personnel, and this will make it more difficult for them to pursue their intelligence programs.
So since there's so many questions, and you have been very patient for all the people that are here, and this is a new process for me, and I know the time's limited, so if you could just give me this. Ranking Member Engel at the beginning today talked about the delicate balance of holding the North Korean leaders accountable while at the same time being mindful of the oppressed population. Can you tell me, and maybe this is a combination of Ambassador Kim and the Assistant Secretary Glazer, but how are you doing that, managing that delicate balance? And can you give us specific examples of how these supposed expanded authorities under the recent executive order are being applied?
Well, again, I fail to see actions that we've taken through our financial sanctions or other financial measures we've applied to North Korea has negatively impacted the Korean people. As I've said time and again, the misery of the Korean people is attributable entirely to the policies and decisions of the government of North Korea. Why we've adopted the approach that we've adopted is for a couple of different reasons. One of which is that in order for the government of North Korea to maintain itself, it needs access to hard currency. It needs access to the international financial system. Not a lot, but it does need it. So this is, so when you identify
I got it, and the time's running out, so
I'm
if I
sorry.
can claim back the time. Could you give me a specific example of how you're doing that since the executive order?
Well, simultaneous with the executive order, it was announced that we had employed the executive order with respect to 3 North Korean entities and 10 North Korean individuals. Importantly, with respect to those 10 individuals, 8 of them were employees of COMID, which is the primary conventional arms company of North Korea. One of the impacts of that, at least as has been reported in the press, is 2 of those individuals that the government of Namibia is considering expelling 2 of those individuals. Now, this is an important source of hard currency, conventional arms sales in Africa. So, look, I'm not doing a victory lap about this, but it's an example, one example, and it's going to be an ongoing effort of how we can and how we will continue to use that authority.
Thank you very much.